understanding how the UX affects where the user is going and if it's accomplishing kind of the business goals.
And if you're not monitoring and knowing what it's doing, you can't maintain it well. You can't.
Deserves probably the principal focus of, oh, we're going to release our app. Well, the next thing, if it wasn't already planned for, it should be monitoring.
You can't just stop maintaining your application, otherwise your users will stop maintaining you. We get to talk today about application maintenance, app maintenance. There's lots of things you can do, obviously, to maintain an application. We're going to hit on 5 points. We might expand out. I don't like lists. I don't like to be at confines. We're going to figure it out.
Sure, man.
So number one, though, to give us a starting point, monitoring your app's performance. This is a good way to build maintenance back into the loop. So how do you monitor applications? How do you feed that back into the maintenance
there's so
loop?
many ways, because a lot of the time when you have an application, it's not just the app that you have to worry about. A lot of the time you're going to have like a backend server. You're going to have extra infrastructure around that. It could be kinds of databases. There's ad nauseum amount of things, right? And having a monitoring service for each of them, both in the sense of like infrastructure monitoring. Well, that's important, of course. You want to know if your stuff's online, you want to know how it's performing. But even then, for instance, like metrics analysis on how your users are interacting with your app, like a common tool people use like Hotjar, heat mapping, understanding how the UX affects where the user's going and if it's accomplishing kind of the business goals. There's a huge kind of career someone could build on the idea of monitoring, reporting, all of that with actual live application experiences within the user and the infrastructure and all of that. And I think it is a wide and very important topic, and that I think deserves probably the principal focus of, oh, we're going to release our app. Well, the next thing, if it wasn't already planned for, it should be monitoring, because it's going to come up.
Yeah, and if you're not monitoring and knowing what it's doing, you can't maintain it well. You can't know if there's something that straight up isn't working, whether that be it's a 404, or people aren't actually engaging with it.
Correct.
But being able to look at over the information and actually maintain your app, it's just as important on day one as it is on day 10 and 20, 100, 1,000, so on and so forth.
Exactly.
You can't just stop maintaining your application, otherwise your users will stop maintaining you.
Exactly. And speaking of kind of the UX and mapping and all of that, what about updating with design trends and whatnot? Does that seem like a good item on there? Is that important for apps?
Yes, I think so. Number 2 would definitely be updating design trends. Knowing what's going on in your particular vertical, what are the actual industry standards and now design trends that are happening within your vertical is important. And then I think overall society as a whole, what do they have to say? Because you can't maintain an app and you can't maintain engagement in this case if you just always feel old. If people are going to your website or opening up your application on their phone and they feel like they have to kind of blow the dust off it and actually work with it.
Now that said, I would also say that it's context dependent.
Sure.
Like if we're talking about a consumer-facing app, it's got to be flashy. Anything that faces the end user, always got to look super good. It's all the marketing, it's all of that. But a lot of times with business apps, it's not really the case. If anyone who's ever used a business app, they're usually not very good looking.
They're not very good looking, but they need to work and they serve a purpose.
They are utilitarian.
Yes.
And I think another quick point to mention on that too with the design trends is that not only is it a design trend, but also there's, for instance, the utilitarian nature of the design too.
Sure.
A big trend within design lately has been inclusivity and accessibility.
Yep.
And that's also a big point of following trends and understanding kind of the needs of your user, especially your user base. How do you know if 50% of your users have mobility concerns or otherwise need big buttons or something, That can come up and matter a lot, and I think it's something to consider with choosing your design paradigm.
Number 3, adding new features. This is a way that you have to maintain your app. So we talked about monitoring it, understanding what's down, and obviously updating trends, but just features in general. You can't just feature lock forever and not build something new.
Yeah.
You're gonna die on the vine.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like it is foolhardy to say you can't just lock features forever. I feel like every entrepreneur I've ever talked to has the features they've made and a backlog that is 4 times the size of what's already been done every time. And that's just the nature of the game. You have so many things you want to do with your product a lot of the time. And I think it's important to move on those.
And focus is important.
Yeah,
so it's, don't just get dissuaded by the entire backlog, but yes, you can't just feature log.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that figuring out what is the the quickest, least effort, highest impact, prioritizing those lists, getting those features out, the stuff that's really core to both your business, your revenue model, whatever it is your app actually does, I think that's really important. I think it's really important. But what might be even more important is number 4, bug fixes. Because you shouldn't write more features if you've got a lot of bugs. That's a whole thing.
I can't tell you how many times I, again, open my browser, go to some website, and there's an error page, and you're just like, I'm done, I'm out.
Yeah.
Or you go to launch your app, and it crashes, and you're like, I wasn't that sold on this app anyway. It is amazing. Even me being in the space, and I know what it takes to build these applications, how quickly I'm like, yeah, let's try a different one. If you are not fixing bugs on the regular, you're going to lose market share so quickly.
Absolutely. It's totally a pitfall, in my opinion, of kind of just, maybe call it dysfunction within a product team. If you're adding features and not addressing the issues you already have, it's like lipsticking a pig.
Yep.
You gotta get a different thing than a pig first. You gotta change it up.
At least a wombat.
Yeah, at least a wombat. I don't know where that metaphor is going, but yeah, you gotta fix your bugs. It's really important, probably more important than a lot of other things. And obviously, kind of tying in the monitoring stuff we've talked about, that often helps you fix those bugs too.
Sure.
These things are somewhat correlated in that sense. So, yeah, I think that's a really important fact.
And we talked, we have other videos where we talked about, kind of startups and stuff, and this can happen with everyone, but I think a really easy trap to fall into when you're trying to maintain an app and you're a startup is deviating from let's fix bugs. It's like, well, we just got to put the new thing out, and we got to work quick. And it's like, yes, you have to be agile, you have to be able to scale, you need to be able to adapt quickly to the market, but it has to be bolstered and supported in the right manner and not full of errant bugs. Everything's gonna have bugs in it.
Of course.
Everything will.
Yes.
We're never gonna catch every single one, but you shouldn't see them. Number 5 as we wrap here. Blockchain was not a thing when I was a kid. It's a big thing now,
Yes, yeah.
We did not have headsets that we can now, use for kind of AR, VR type stuff. Technology is ever changing. There's new stuff coming out all the time. How does that work into maintenance? Should you adapt new technology?
So I think there's a few different facets to that, right? Because there's obviously adapting new technology in the sense of you have to fit into the platform you are deployed on, whether that's iOS, the web, Android, whatever, Windows. You have to conform to those standards. A lot of the time, Apple's legendary for this.
Yes.
They'll just change things up on you, and they're like, oh, you want to update your app? Too bad, we changed everything. Fix it, or you're just stuck where you are. And that's a really unfortunate thing for some platforms, but you do have to pay attention to it, and you have to get ahead of it. And on top of that, of course, that's just a necessary adaptation.
Sure.
The kind of elective adaptation, you might call it, of being able to follow trends, much like the design trend thing we talked about, but also just tech trends.
Sure.
I think that there's two sides of this. I think it's kind of polarizing too.
Sure.
You can either find a fad or like a trend or whatever it be, whether it's something to stay or something temporary. NFTs is a good example. Who knows?
Shots fired. Wow. Okay.
But if you're gonna do that, it's not like there isn't money to be made in that space.
Yeah.
You just have to go quick. It's a put up or shut up moment. If you're going to go and try to adapt and get to those trends as they're happening. But if you're not going to do that to those kind of like wildfire trends that happen, it's probably best to be really judicious on what you actually are going to implement. Because a lot of the time it could be a fool's errand if you're just kind of, for lack of a better term, half-assing it,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you gotta know what is in the space. You need to know how to basically adapt quickly and actually pull it in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna get left behind.
Yeah, exactly.
Realistically,
Exactly.
or Possibly, like you said, in the case of a certain technology, you're going to kind of dodge a bullet.
Yeah, you're going to dodge a bullet, or you're going to be just too late to the party. You
Sure.
know, a lot of these trends come up and they disappear, and that's kind of what I meant by just being judicious. It's like, if we're not going to change the whole process, put all the resources in this and try and beat this thing as it's in the market, and get into it and capture users or whatever it is you want to do with this trend, if there's any doubt that that can happen in a timely basis, you probably just shouldn't start. Just focus on your app and what it already does well.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday, where Cody and Chris talked all about really the key things that you need to pay attention to with app maintenance and how important app maintenance is. It isn't just that you develop it and forget about it. If you have any questions about what they talked about today, go ahead and leave them in the comments section and we will get right back to you. And don't forget to check out the description box down below. We have a bunch of really helpful links for you guys, including a link to our free DevOps guide, which will really help you out if you're in this phase of app maintenance or you're looking for DevOps services. You can also find us online at Bixley.com, and there's a big button right at the top that says Start My Roadmap. That actually gets you a free 60-minute call with Chris to talk about your next app idea. Until next time, this has been an episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday.